Welcome to the massive open online course in computer science. The subject operating systems, the topic firewalls. Firewalls is perhaps the very first most popular assurance which we are building for security provided by the operating system. There were two major topics, protection and security, which were discussed earlier. Protection roughly was to take care of the internal aspects of the usage of the system by many users who are working with several shared resources. Security was roughly denoting what can potentially happen from outside. 70% of the time people are very enthusiastic. They simply want to exercise their minds, they want to work with the system, they really want to get their work done with adequate joy and enjoyment, they experiment with the system. 70% of the users are like that. There are 10% of the people who are disenchanted with the system, saying that what will the system do, we should do everything ourselves. They are not so happy that between them and the actual resources there is a middle ground called system which tells that this is how it can be done, this is how it cannot be done. People like that tend to think that if they really get on to the top, we will do better with the system. It is not really the case with operating systems or software systems, because we give only adequate privileges, only the principle of adequate privileges is the best way of managing. The person can be anybody, but to do a task, what are all the privileges that can be extended, that will be extended. It is very task oriented. There is a subtle difference between the software systems and the typical systems where we think that it is possible if we remove the system and get direct access to the resources, we do better. Maybe in theory it is right, but they tend to get a little bit disenchanted. Most of the times 80% of the users need awareness, need a little bit of education, need a little bit of talking to, tell them that this is how the difference is, and usually it falls in place. So 80% of the exercise is primarily done within an organization. That is what we call protection. 10% are disgruntled users who are simply there to put some spokes. It can happen. Every pack, whatever be the selection, 10% bad apples are going to happen is a theory, it is a thumb rule. Only 10% is what comes from outside. Gradually, as things began to get more and more connected, the distinction between what is internal and what is external got blurred. Today, in a typical operating system, we talk about protection and security together. It may be from inside threat, it may be from outside threat. There definitely exist threats and vulnerabilities which becomes very obvious as we progress towards sharing a limited number of resources, limited computer time, and we want people to make sure that the waiting time is reduced, the response time is high, the throughput is high, the CPU utilization is high. Overall, a majority of the users are satisfied with the way the system is responding. So, having said this, the competition is so high, the distinction between who or what group of people are internal, what group of people are external is very difficult. I am very much a member of this institution, but when I travel and access my mail, how will you classify me? As an external, as an internal, or an internal going out temporarily and accessing the same mailbox? So, in theory, the way I access my mailbox, for example, from my office in CEG campus, and the way I access my mailbox from anywhere outside of my office in CEG campus is different. They need to be understood differently. It is not that I am not an insider, it is not that I am a complete outsider. So, gradually as the usage of networking or sharing resources across a network, or as Scott McNealy put, The network is the computer. The entire network is operating with this interface in front of me. All machines are connected. The resources can be anywhere. In theory, this speech can be transliterated anywhere in India through a dictaphone. If there is a dictaphone available, this speech will get transliterated, typed anywhere. An email will come saying that this is what is your speech as you are doing it. Here it is getting recorded in video camera. Later on we will tell that the video camera can also be remote. There is no need for a studio. All that you need is something that is in front of the person where the image goes, and the rest of the processing happens elsewhere. It can happen. We can always think of it. We now have Skype connectivity. We have very well established computer supported collaborative work. People are working. They are related by work. 24/7 there will be people who are working. Under these circumstances, what are the quick assurances which we can give to the users at large, saying that you and your resources and therefore your work are in safe hands of the operating system, or there is a systemic assurance that we will take care of what your work was carefully, what your resource demands were, how your resources were used. We know how to track your work, we know how to log your work, we know how to do the administration of the system in a manner where when a dispute or a discrepancy comes, all that we want to do is to go through the log. Today we are taking advantage of the log to prove that only one user was using the system at a given point in time. The anonymity on the web is no more a valid idea. We are no more anonymous on the web. We can be tracked to a nicety of where the location is, where the concerned person is. In theory, it builds more assurance than thinking that somewhere we are there, nobody knows we are there, we do not even know what is connected to the net. So, the very first level major assurance that we are building into the system is called firewalls. What is this firewall about? It is a choke point of control and monitoring. It is something like a kind of a gate, a checkpoint, which is also called a choke point, where we are very careful in noting down what are the trouble spots, where are the vulnerabilities, where are the threats coming from. If a threat happens at that point, the system is getting choked. So, that point needs control and monitoring. It may be a most used laser printer. Lot of people are rushing to the laser printer. Unnecessarily, the most important tasks are getting delayed. So, we tell that let us have an access restriction to the laser printer. Not all can take a printout on the laser printer. Only these people who have required permission weights can use the laser printer. So, we have to find out where are the threat points, where are the vulnerabilities. We call them choke points. We start controlling and monitoring. There are many ways of doing this control and monitoring, which we will see during the course of this lecture. Interconnects networks with different trust. There are multiple networks, some are very trustworthy, some are not so trustworthy. In the lecture on security, we spoke about digital certificates, digital signatures. We have been talking about methods of saying that as I connect to a site, it will tell there are vulnerabilities. This URL is not a safe URL. Do you want me to go ahead, or do you tell that let us cancel this? So many times it happens. Even yesterday when I was trying to connect to the network from here, there was that message flashing saying that connecting to this network is not safe. Do you want to go ahead, or do you want to cancel this? I preferred cancelling this because this is a system that is being used by so many people. People come, time is precious. The team here is already racing against the time, the slots are all there. If something conks off on this machine, then it will be a serious disruption of the entire schedule. Therefore, what do? I simply cancel it. No, I do not want to go ahead. But see, the system tells that this is a vulnerability. You are trying to access a URL that may result in a major security lapse or a protection lapse. Do you want to proceed? The same story holds good with the virus. The virus, if it is there, virus scan is there, it will tell there is a vulnerability, do you want to go ahead with this device or not. It can happen anywhere, all the viruses, worms, different types of security measures we have already seen in the topic titled security, which I did earlier. It imposes restrictions on network services, not only the accesses, the network will not respond. If you want to do something for which you do not have permissions, it will simply keep quiet, it does not respond. These services are for reserved people. There were so many such things. For example, in the earlier lecture I said that if you know that there is a need for a port, IP port address to be given to you for doing a file transfer, you may have to talk to the systems administrator and get that port opened. We have removed remote login in many cases unless it has prior permissions. We should understand that we are a part of the system. It is not that the system administrator and the users on either sides of the table and they are exchanging all kinds of heated debates and arguments. They have to work together. There is a need for this particular facility, please provide for it, make provisions for it. So, that is how we have been building. Some services are not there. Remote login is a Unix operating system service which can be blocked because of unnecessary login threats. We do not want it. It is a very simple interface to the operating system, and simplicity is also leading to lot of vulnerabilities. Whereas from an email, that email client is written very well, it operates in a web browser and it is limited. If something conks off, it is only your inbox that conks off, whereas in a remote login you can create havoc to many users. It happened, we learned through experience. What was very simple gradually began to be a bigger headache. Therefore, we started blocking services, not only the resources, accesses, but certain services will also be blocked by the administrator. And how do you change? You will have to change the password, get the permissions of the super user, and then go ahead. If we understand the system, it is a smooth operating, but it is necessary. This is how we built the assurances. Auditing and control access, there is an audit trail which we cannot ignore. Whatever is happening in the system, it is well time stamped, it is well documented. There is no point today in talking about protection and security without audit and controlling access. There must be a log, the log must be documented. This action has been performed by this user at this point in time. There must be a controlled access. Who are the users? There must be some method of giving that on request. There must be some backing saying that is a legitimate user, itself immune to penetration. We have been talking about the same exercise. We said that this firewall is very good, it will protect everyone, but what is a guarantee that the firewall that is giving an impression that is a fence around the field cannot be broken? It can be broken. If a system can be broken, firewall is also an arrangement with the system that can also be broken. So, we have been doing some penetration test. The strength of the firewall can be estimated. How do we change the firewall configurations? Who can change the firewall configuration? What happens if the firewall is broken? How quickly will the system administrator will be alerted saying that the firewall itself is broken? So, it provides what is called a perimeter defense, which is just on the borderline of doing packet filtering, circuit gateways, application gateways. Combination of above is a dynamic packet filter. We can talk about the packet. At every packet transmission, we will check whether this packet can go out or this packet can come in. That is a policy level decision which we need to take. The circuit gateway, it happens when we block the resources completely, let us say in multimedia transmission from source to the destination, everything that is required to make sure that the transmission is of high quality, the quality of service is high, there is no jitter, there is no blurring of the image. It requires a complete blocking, a complete understanding of the entire source to the destination connectivity. Application gateways, it is a fact that applications have to work with shared resources within the organization, across the network. now the organizational boundaries are not so rigid. We need to share the applications across, and at the application level gateway also we can have a firewall defined saying that these applications will access this particular set of resources, they can access these services, it can block resources, it can block services. It is all the case of defining a policy that works best for 90% of the people who are using. It's just a case of 10%, and for that 10% we have a huge security stack. And today, as we keep saying, the distinction between internal and external is completely blurred, but the idea of faith in humanity at large ensures that most of the time that rule is still holding good. 90% of the users from wherever they are only manageable through negotiations, through persuasion, through awareness, through the way in which we build working together a mechanism where the users and the system administration and everything starts working together. And then what we talk about is whether all these are determined when the system has started, or we can change it as we progress. These are all matters of policy which we will have to nail down with the in conjunction with an understanding of what the users want to do, what the administration can support. All this needs to be supported in a manner where we talk about a method which tells private network once it is within the IP address of a given organization, it keeps on moving within the organization. All these policies will have to be checked. Everything that we have discussed earlier on, user access, access restrictions, the way in which the security levels are determined, the way in which the digital signatures are verified, digital certifications are verified, all this happens within. It may not be a simple router, it may be a bigger gateway. The earlier slide uses a most appropriate word. It says, we have to go for a gateway which is a more sophisticated machine than a simple router. So what we have done is look at packet filtering. At every packet do you want to change? At every message, what are the ways sample packets? What is it that gives us a handle of determining whether a particular exercise can happen or not? The combination of all this we are talking about. We have now faster routers, faster networking components, faster machines. Everything happens in a jiffy. The processing is fine, the optical fiber is the fastest. Today we are talking about optical networks. It is not the speed anymore, but the sophistication of the policy that gives that necessary assurance that makes 90% of the users wherever they are think very positive about the exercise. It is true that there is no simple way of assuring that everything will be happening all the time the same way as we have predicted. But then we need to understand that at the transport layer we have so much of detailing that goes in. Everything is taken care, but when things go wrong we need to be very alert. How quickly can we find out something has gone wrong? More importantly, when something has gone wrong, can we trace to the fault? That is where we need the logs, that is where we need the administrative files, that is where we need all the authentication mechanisms which we have been talking about. Usage of packet filters. Are we going to filter both incoming and outgoing interfaces? Ingress filtering of spoofed IP addresses. Internally there can be an IP address clash. It keeps on rotating within the system, but we do not know whether it has gone out or not. Egress filtering. Are we looking at whether it has gone from end to end? So how do we configure? First, specify your security policy. Specify allowable packets in terms of logical expressions. Rewrite expressions in syntax supported by the vendor. The general rule is least privilege. Please be task oriented. Whoever the user is, please provide privileges necessary for fulfilling the task specified. It does not bother about the user and the position of the user or the concerned user as a person, but the task needs to be performed like that. Principle of least privilege. All these things can be understood. Today the users are very network savvy, they are very aware of what are all the things that can be done in the network. We do not have to explain the networking advantages, they are demanding more and more, they want more support from the network. All that is not expressly permitted or prohibited is there. If you do not need it, eliminate it. There is no point in connecting something and then hoping for the best. If that resource is not necessary, if that information is not necessary to be hosted, do not host it, as simple as that. So, these are some simple principles with which we work. The rule set is very simple. We talk about an action, we talk about our host, port, their host, port, comment. By default, the action is block. You please tell which are the hosts in our institution, which are the hosts in the port, where is the receiving end, where is the receiving port, and then is it default or is it by choice. The action is blocking. Now, this is a very good idea, very simple idea. If you know your host, if you know your port and you are sending to some other host, some other port, we know what is to be the action taken. You can make it a little more sophisticated, you can give a choice, you can block or allow. If it is going to SpyGot, just block. Whatever it is, if the other host is SpyGot, do not allow. We do not trust these people, or we simply do not want to pass on anything from our host. Star is anything from our side. This is specified. Our GW server to a port 25, then it goes. Connection to our SMTP port is available. Now, the whole concern here is that only half of it is under our control. Which half is under our control? Our host configuration, our port. This is under our control, this is not under our control. This is done by somebody else. So, either we establish a policy framework that factors the stakeholders, or we won't know how to control. We go back to the square one saying that something has gone out, we do not know whether it has been received or not. What we want are safe, reliable and secure communications. So, having said that, we need to somehow go back and see whether it is an action, out host, port, their host, port, comment. What is the action? It is allow. Why is it wrong? Our defined restriction is based solely on the outside host port number, which we have no way of controlling. If he suddenly changes, if the other side changes the port number, which is configurable. Today, all networking components are software controlled, and we want the resources to be utilized very efficiently. We want to change the port numbers. Some resources were earlier on some port. It is all dynamic host control, dynamic port numbering. There is so much of dynamism. The network protocols have become very high speed. The network components have become very sophisticated. The connecting links are very fast, which have no way of controlling the outside host port number, and we may end up in the same situation saying that we tried our best at our end, but the receiving end we do not even know what is happening. So, how to have a shake hand? We talked about more protocols, we talked about more and more protocols. Now, an enemy can access any internal machine and port by originating his call from port 25 on the outside machine. The reverse is also true. It is true that all these solutions are vulnerable themselves. The fence may easily be broken. Firewall in these ideas is providing a good fence, saying that we have taken adequate assurance based on what we came to know from our users, what we came to know from our remote machine, but if things change unexpectedly, we cannot give any assurance. We have to go back and do some exercise. For all this, the logs, the administrative bookkeeping, the way the users are authenticated, everything makes lot of business sense. So, we have been seeking that if it goes to so and so particular port, please send one acknowledgement back. These days in the email we talk about filters, we talk about so many things, received acknowledgement. You see, the concern here is that once the receiver opens the email, you will get an acknowledgement. It does not mean that the contents of the email have been read. He simply opened, he or she simply opened the email that you have sent, and you will get an acknowledgement saying that yes, the email has been read. It does not mean anything, it simply has been opened. did the user take cognizance of? Now, as we progressed in this email usage, the users have become very network savvy. We know that there is some kind of an email policy that has to be evolved, in email etiquette, the language which we use in the email, so many constraints, so many things have happened. There is an e-policy that needs to fall in place. So, in a sense, we talk about technology and people coming together with a kind of an overall framework of operations, of which firewall remains the most prominent, the most popular and the most easy to understand idea by everybody. The administrator is comfortable, the user is comfortable, they will simply tell that, see, this is the format in which I have to tell, this is the action you have to take when the port is like this destination, this port, this flag, be done with it. You have specified what is your requirement. Performance of the packet filters, all this takes time. Unless you invest on faster networking components, faster connecting media, the advantage of networking is not likely to happen on your desk. If it is so slow that if you send a mail from here to this machine, it takes an hour, you get bored with the technology. There is no reason to believe that a mail sent from this machine to this machine is just direct like this. It may go via 4 countries and reach this machine. And we want to do this many tasks. For doing this many tasks, we need this many privileges, this many access restrictions. Things have become very dynamic and we can use the IP addressing. There are constraints, there are concerns. From IPv4, we move to IPv6. The entire addressing schemes have been changed, but we know how to move from one addressing scheme to another addressing scheme. So, technology centricism, people centricism should go hand in hand somewhere. We have been talking about a variable usage, stateful packet filter. The packet is not only discarded, but there is a little bit of information on the packet saying that this is the reason why the packet is discarded. That is a stateful packet filter. It tells this is the reason why this packet is discarded. One thing is to tell that this URL is not safe. If we had a smarter way of finding out this URL is not safe because it is responding like this, it is giving some erroneous signal back. You can simply take a brute force action that every URL is a potential threat. You first block all URLs, gradually we will release one by one. So, the idea of judging which URL is malicious, what is the degree of maliciousness, plenty of work is going on. All my good friends who work in the networking area have developed some fantastic theories, fantastic models. Things have become very fast. You can have a very thick check, very thick filter happening in a flash. The networking media has changed. The medium access control has improved a lot. They examine the IP packet in the context. We know where is the context, we know when it was discarded, hence we are able to detect bogus packets. So, stateful filtering, this is how it is not merely a report that tells you sent one message, 3 packets got discarded. No, you sent this message, 3 packets out of it got discarded because packet 1 for this reason, packet 2 for this reason, packet 3 for this reason. So, we have taken advantage of the software, we have taken advantage of the hardware, they are increasing speeds, they are increasing sophistication. We are addressing a better complexity by telling that you get more information by looking at the actions initiated by your filter. You can look at the filter, you can take actions on that. Packet filtering, application gateways, firewall runs a set of proxy programs, proxies filter incoming, outgoing packets. All incoming traffic directed to firewall, all outgoing traffic appears to come from the firewall. Policy embedded in the proxy program. Do you want the user to keep on checking the policy, or this proxy keeps on using those simple ideas? The rules are all there, it processes most of the times. Application level gateways, circuit level. Circuit level is more or less at a lower level of a transport layer. It blocks resources from the sender to receiver, manages a correct session. Application level layer is at a higher level. The demands on the programmer who is writing the application will increase. If you are opting for only a proxy at the circuit level, the operating system takes a huge chunk of the responsibility of making it happen. If you want to move it up to the application level, the intensity of programming exercise becomes more complicated. We do not really have that many highly qualified secure programmers. The languages themselves are vulnerable. The system itself is vulnerable. We are talking about extensions to the standard languages. Today we are talking about having 33 to 36 extensions to ANSI C, which is a well established standard. Without using those 33 to 36 new extended features that make it secure C, we are not confident whether the application level gateway is working as we have assured that it is working. Taking it onto the application is taking more onus on the programmer. If the programming exercise is not of high quality, we will have difficulty. We will go back again saying that all breaches are happening, we do not know where the breach is happening, we do not know how to control the breach. The fence, which is called now a firewall in our language, is determining the strength by which you can take care of what is the work that is being done, who are your users, how that work is protected from wherever. The network is the computer, there is no doubt about it. The distinction between internal and external is blurring. It is no more the case of 90% internal, 10% external. Overall, 90% people can be managed, 90% of the users can be managed through explanations, through facilitating understanding, to improving awareness. So, we talk about the idea that technology has come in, we want this technology is a great idea, but we want even school students to be aware of all these things, spread the awareness, make them understand, then we leverage the technology better, it yields better ideas. Has full access to protocol, we must be more responsible. The onus will now be on the programmer. He needs to understand telnet, he or she needs to understand telnet, needs to understand FTP, the network connection. So much knowledge the programmer should have in addition to the application. What are the functionalities of the application, where is the system, the daemon spawns, everything. It is necessary to therefore understand that even if all the resources are blocked, we can still have vulnerabilities happening. We need a highly secure host system, we need a complete control on host, trusted to enforce trusted separation between network and two times you need to trust. One is trusted people, trusted policy to enforce a trusted separation between all the things that we have been talking about. What is ours, what is not there. It is a clear screened host architecture where we talk about screening router here, and it is this part, the firewall, screening router. Only these two components in your entire host architecture are managing everything that I have said. If this host is broken, many things are broken. So, we want to be very careful about the protocols which we are using. One part of the host is called the bastion host. If this bastion falls, there is a serious concern. So, this is what we need to understand. Plenty of features, faster software, faster hardware, faster networking infrastructure, faster connecting media, and this is the overall theoretical definition of a firewall, which a systems administrator can simply look on the screen and tell what is happening. This is what is addressing, this is what we talk about. This is the representation in a way in which the systems administrator will simply find out what is happening, if anything wrong is happening. Thank you.